Hello and welcome. This is the Nickolas Natali Show. I am your host, Nickolas Natali. I'm here to bring you that good content that's going to help you live a more fulfilling life. Before we dive into it today, I'm going to go with the old reviewer of the week. You know, you can be the reviewer of the week if you leave a 5-star review and you say your thoughts. We got L.H. Hellengren. I think that's how it's pronounced. LH or Hellengren. Anyway, Hellengren says amazing. Love listening to the podcast. Very good content that keeps you entertained. Hellengren, thank you so much. I do this for you. We got a wonderful banger of an episode today. This is the first ever solo podcast for the Nickolas Natali Show, and I gotta tell you, it's gonna be a doozy. I also must say this is a second take. I originally had the idea for this. This is pretty much going to be a recap of the things I've learned in 2019. I'm a few days late. I did record the first one in 2019. I did it with a nice little studio-esque vibe. Killer vibes. I had a little green screen. If you're watching on YouTube, maybe I'll pop that in right now so you can get a little glimpse of what it's looking like. But now I'm chilling in a sketchy parking lot trying to make things happen, baby, because it's 2020. There's no time to mess around. If you want something, you got to do what it takes. And that might just mean sitting in a sketchy parking lot. We're also going with a new microphone today, so I'm hoping it's going to be a little crisper. I'm holding it in my hand. Kind of feels like I'm interviewing myself. I'm playing two parts of an interview, but it's going to be fun. Let's just dive right into it. I started 2019 off in a pretty poor mental state. My mental state was, I would say, I was depressed. I was in a depression. I was coming off of the paying off my student loans, which happened last July. And the whole, what is that, 5 months post or 6 months post paying them off, I fell into this weird depression of having put all of my identity into that accomplishment, which was wrong, and I think I also learned from that experience just the difference between what being sad is and what being depressed is, because I think being sad, at least for me in my experience, it's more of a feeling, it's more of an emotion, and it's kind of something that you can shake off. Like somebody could say something nice to me or kind and maybe brighten my day and it would kind of flip and I could change my mood. But a depression is more of a mind state for me where it's elongated, where my thoughts are kind of being infiltrated and it's over a long period of time. And that's kind of where I was at. And I realized that I can't be putting my identity into accomplishments, which is difficult for me because I find a lot of value in myself, a lot of self-worth from accomplishing things. I think by nature, I'm fairly driven and I have a lot of goals, but I get stuck in this weird limbo where I'm really frustrated and can fall into a depression if I haven't achieved the goal I want yet. And then on the flip side, once I do accomplish said goal, then I'm left depressed because now I don't have this purpose anymore. And it's a tough spot to be in. So early in 2000, or I shouldn't say early in 2019, but that's where I was coming from. In that 2019, I kind of realized, like, one, this depression battle that I deal with, I'm starting to realize it's going to be a lifelong thing. Whether I would want it to or not, it's always going to be a battle for me to be aware of where I'm at mentally and when I'm being sad or whether I'm actually falling into negative thoughts in a negative space. I've come up with a little bit of a system to try to defeat it if I recognize it quick enough. It mainly turns into how can I be grateful for the things that I do have, grateful for the things that I have done, grateful for the people in my life, or it's really humbling and simple when I kind of step back and being like, okay, how did you get in this mental space to begin with? And just kind of backtrack. We've all heard it before, but I really do think there's always something to be grateful for. And I don't mean grateful as in like, oh yeah, this is nice that I have it, but like, you got a roof over your head, you're sleeping in a bed, something like that. I think it goes a long way. Also in January, I went to China and Thailand, and that was an interesting experience on multiple levels, but the biggest one being that it wasn't a mission trip. Like, as you may know, I went with my friend Kyle Five Rod, if you're listening. high. The trip wasn't a mission trip. It was two dudes going going to Asia and just kind of hanging out. But we ended up sharing the gospel more than I ever have on any of the mission trips that I've ever been on. And that, and I'm not flexing on any of you Christians out there. I'm not telling you got to step up your evangelical game, but maybe you do. I don't know. Maybe you needed to hear that from me. But really though, like I'm typically in the past, previously in from my teens to my early 20s, I was probably more evangelical. But the past few years, if the conversation goes there, I'll go there. But there's no way that I've been intentional in my outreach by any means. But yeah, this trip, I found that the hard conversations were happening in places that were really like dark. I remember having a conversation with somebody who was a former pastor kid, former PK, just so the mic will get you with a p, former pastor's kid. And we were walking down the street in Thailand that was full of like strip clubs and bars and just like where the heart of the nightlife is in Bangkok. It was Las Vegas on steroids. And me and this guy ended up talking about how there has to be a universal truth out there, that a lot of these things that we do and the reasons we do them point to God. And I don't know if it affected him in any way, but I mean, it kind of meant a lot to me, right? Like that's the whole point of, I don't know, maybe it's just my perception these days, but like it's so easy to be comfortable talking to other Christians. If you're not a Christian, I'm sorry, I'm going to dive into a little bit of Christian talk for a second. It's so easy for Christians to just keep talking to Christians about God, and that's great. I'm all about encouraging your walk with Christ. Like there was something about being in an unsafe place, in a anti-morale place, where like a very dark place where Jesus could live, like where Jesus could still be shown and, I don't know, glorified. That was really cool. China and Thailand, baby. That's all I got for you there. In March, oh man, March was a doozy. We're skipping all of February because it is just recovering from Asia. You know how you recover from the Asia. In March, I started this podcast, and that's been an experience, I'd say. A whole big experience. Starting out, like the biggest difficulties I had was editing, and obviously I think hopefully you guys can see that I'm trying my deepest in my heart and hardest to get better audio quality, but the biggest struggle was editing. Editing was taking me far longer than my videos take me to edit, and I spent at least anywhere from 15 to 25 hours on each of my videos editing, just trying to make. It could be because I'm a perfectionist, but also just because it takes a long time to watch a bunch of footage. But the podcasts were taking me longer than that, or maybe even probably around the same times, but on the higher end. It's taking me 20 to 25 hours to just edit a dang podcast. And of course that's because I'm new to it, but wow, that was certainly a challenge that I was not anticipating. And then with the interview process, I think when I was starting out, I was doing tons of research on my guest, which I think is a great thing, and I still do lots of research on each of my guests, but I was so constricting boa constricting on where I wanted the conversation to go. Like I would have all of my questions planned out, and I would kind of force, this is what I felt like, hopefully it doesn't show in the interviews, force my way through the conversation to get to topics that I wanted to get to. And part of me felt like I was missing on really good, juicy things that the guest wanted to say or talk about that they were probably more passionate about. So I think I've seen as each interview goes down the line that it's looser, it's more, I try to make them more conversational in a sense, but just I have a vision of things that I'd like to talk about, but there's no boundaries, you know what I mean? And the research is still there, so I can have a more deeper understanding of the person and bring a deeper level to the conversation. I just felt like I was really restricting my guests, and I'm happy that I'm learning that over time. And the other thing is, wow, planning these podcasts is a pain in the butt. Right around in the March time frame, I was meeting people on film sets, etc., etc., other places, etc. That sounds like a pretty good story. Other places, etc. Come on down to other places, etc. The guests were flaky. Like I had a, and I'm not trying to pour shade on anybody here. Of course, I would still love to have those people that I asked on the show. I asked them for a reason, but it's just so difficult to plan with guests, especially that aren't in my city. And most of the guests, I don't know if you guys know, like it's either I've known them forever and a long time, or I met them once before and I found them super interesting and I want to bring them on the show. And oftentimes it's those people that are kind of like, yeah, we had a good time, but I don't know, you seem kind of sketchy. You live in your car, you're kind of weak sauce. Those are the people that kind of have the hardest time, in my opinion, scheduling. And I don't blame them. I'm kind of a sketchy guy. Still in the March through May time frame, I started taking classes at the Groundlings, which is a comedy theater in Hollywood. I've been dying to talk about the Groundlings with somebody who also has experienced it. Ahmed was on the show and he's done the Groundlings before, but for whatever reason, it just didn't come up, you know? See, look how loose I am. Big loose guy. The Groundlings was one, it was just difficult and it was demanding, and I had the expectation that I could go on there and just do some zingy funny one-liners, but that is not the case. I was so intrigued with how it was almost like they were teaching you to be funny. They brought it down to like a technique and a science of what improving is. And I do think it is. Like, there's so much technique to be good at it. And it is really witty and it is really fast. Yeah, I just thought it was very, very interesting and intriguing. And I think it's been much more fun to apply what I've learned in improv classes into my real life than the improv scenes are pretty dang fun. But if you yes and somebody on the street, man, taking that relationship to the next level. The other thing I learned was, man, it's up in LA. Commuting from San Diego to LA every weekend to do a 4-hour improv class and then either drive back or wake up at 4 to head back to work on Mondays. It kind of proved to myself, like, man, I really do want this. And I loved the class, and the commute was terrible. Don't mean to complain to you, but it was difficult. And I realized, wow, like when you want something, sometimes you got to do stuff that really, really blows. But it was worth it, and I wouldn't change it for the world. Right around that time, since I was heading up to Hollywood, I met a couple of folks that were on some movie sets, or film sets, TV sets, all that good stuff, and it was great. I was meeting people that had the same interests as myself. Who would have thought that if you hang out with people that like to do what you do, you get along pretty well. It's pretty exciting. And I think this was kind of like the first time in my life where I was really, like, I met people that like to make videos and stuff, but like this was film. This was the real thing, baby. And it was so exciting because it was like, wow, these people are kind of nerdy, and I'm kind of nerdy about this this film stuff. It was also cool to see like people were doing what I wanted to do. They do that as their job. They're making things happen, and it also opened my eyes up to, first of all, being a PA on a set has got to be just. It really, in my opinion, it is grunt work. It's hard work. I've talked about it, and there's no, man, what do I say? The social status that you have in any other region of life does not matter once you're on a film set. If you're the PA, you're doing grunt work, baby. It doesn't matter who you are. And I was trying to test out the waters because I obviously would love to be I would love to be a working actor, and just from different people that I've met and things that I've listened to and read, it seems like there is a ladder that you could potentially climb. Like, you network yourself well enough as a PA, you get your skills with other jobs on the set, like grip electric, and who knows, maybe even the director of photography, little assistant director, all that stuff, and then you could potentially, meet the right person that'll get you in front of the camera. But it was clear to see that there is definitely a streamlined process if you can finagle it. If you have an audience online that's willing to enjoy your content that you put out, you can bypass all of that. You can bypass the whole climbing of the ladder, and you can create the content that you want to create, and the people that want to see it can enjoy it. There isn't any approval, I guess, approval from a hierarchy that'll get you in front of the camera or to get you to be a writer. You heard on with the podcast with Grant Singer this year, the process to be a writer is demanding, and there was also a ladder for that. But if you have an audience and you can just write for them, it's everything you want to do right in one place. So the digital space just clearly seems to be the route to go in, and we've seen it in multiple careers. Being one of the first ones that come to my mind is Liza Koshy. Like she is a wonderful example of turning a digital career into. She has her own Netflix show. She's on Netflix, so on, so forth, and what have you. Moving on. In May, I turned 23, and that was weird. It was weird in the sense that I suddenly felt a newfound independence in all of the decisions that I make. I don't know what it was. Actually, I know exactly what it was, and I'm going to tell you. I suddenly had this overwhelming stress that I was old, and I became very concerned and obsessed with time. I felt like I needed to act now, and I needed to act fast because time was running out, and time is running out. 23, I kind of finally felt like, yikes. This is me, this is where I am, and this is not where I wanted to be as a child, and it's not where I want to be now. So I got to start putting in work and find out what I actually like to do. And that's kind of what this whole year was about. 2019 for me was dedicated to be a year of action, and I was just trying to do as much as I could to figure out what I actually like to do. All of these goals, where am I striving to be? And who do I want to be? What career do I want to have? Because these are all decisions we get to make. Might as well choose the one that you actually want to do. So there you go. I set off for it. I joined a baseball league. And that's just, man, that's like something deep inside of me that I'm like, I don't know if insecure is the right word, but I don't know, always afraid to share. I always felt like my baseball career was snuffed a little early. The flame was just spat on. That's a bad analogy. And I didn't want to leave anything left undone, left on the table. I wanted to see if I could turn that leaf over. So I joined a baseball league, and it was not the experience I was hoping for. It was not as fun. I forgot how douchey guys on baseball teams can be in regards to how they treat other people, not necessarily their teammates. And the baseball culture, I just forgot about all of that, and all of my memories are filled with the good times and the good teammates that I had and the love of the game. And then I really do love baseball, but I got some closure that, that's the end of the road. And now I feel great knowing that I didn't leave anything unturned. I have closure in all accounts, and that was great. That was something I really needed in 2019 and in any day, because it was always gnawing at the back of my mind. The what if, oh, you should have played, or you should have tried to play, or you could still play, you could train and play, and I finally got my answer. So whether I like that answer or not, but I got it, and that makes me feel better. In August was a big month. I joined an acting class, which was very challenging for me, not joining it, but doing it. Acting is very emotional and very high emotion, and I am a thinker, to say the least. I think logically, and I think about everything, and I think a lot. So having to use my emotions was difficult, but I've found it to make me a more well-rounded person. And I've also found emotion to not be, even with the podcast this year with Luke and Gage, I think even just joining that class made me realize how much I thought emotion meant weakness. And seeing men on the stage, like, for the first few weeks, I was like, these guys are weak. And not even thinking about the craft. Like, obviously people are acting, and it's a pseudo version of them. I just thought they were so weak. And now I realize how powerful a communicator emotions can be, and how powerful it can be if you have control over them, and when you know to express them, and what is the correct emotional response to things. I'm speaking all outside of the craft, which has been great too. It's just it's also helped me just be so much more self-aware and much more honest with myself. So it's helped me dial into what am I actually like, why am I feeling the way that I'm feeling, and what is this emotion, and I can identify it and go along with it to discover what it is and discover where I'm actually living in the moment that I am living in right now. That's been great, and it's been really, really pushing me. Oh, I should say, it's also made me more empathetic. Understanding emotions and being able to reach more emotional places and emotions that I've never felt before has made me more empathetic to people and also the situations that they've been in and that they have lived through. I'm able to be like, wow, I may not know exactly what that feels like, but I feel like it can get to a place where, it would be pretty close. And if it doesn't feel good, like, man, I empathize. I empathize with you, which I think it's a good quality that I would like to have because I think it'll make me a more compassionate person. Also, I used to edit out all the ums of podcasts, and this one's gonna have all of them. So, to you. In August, I started a business as well, Little Webby LLC. I dove right into it, and it's much more work than I anticipated. I've always had a dream of starting and running my own business, but little did I know that it takes more than a handful of work. It takes 2 handfuls of work. The real difficulty for me is, man, how do I word this? Let's start here. Having clients is tough. it's much more difficult than I imagined. Just managing client expectations has got to be the hardest thing that I've experienced so far because it's right out of the gate. As soon as you make contact with a potential client, you are setting the tone for that relationship the entire time. This is from my own experience. I feel like you got to be clear cut on what your process is and how the interactions are going to go and how much time you're willing to allocate toward each interaction. The biggest thing for me right now is smoothing out the processes for potential clients to come in, and we can nail down what they want, and we're going to nail down how we do it, and then we're going to give it to them. And making that a seamless process where there's no miscommunication, which who knows if that'll ever happen, but that's always the goal, is what I'm striving to achieve. Now, having started selling merch and sweatshirts, which have my own blood, sweat, and tears of designing and finally having a vision come to fulfillment after 2 years of wanting it, has been so rewarding, so much more rewarding. And I think when I get the client something that they want, I am excited and I'm very happy and I feel fulfilled and rewarded. But I don't know if I feel the same way as when somebody gets a sweatshirt. Like, it makes me really happy that somebody is happy with the sweatshirt that they got. That's a product that they have that they can keep, and it's almost like it's like a shared experience. Like, I'm sharing part of me with them and they're enjoying it, and that feels great. The other part about running a business is my heart is I try to be very, as much as possible, protective of the people that are working along with for Little Webby, or a part of the Little Webby team is the best way to put it, because those are the people that I feel like I have to protect. I don't want them ever to have to deal with clients or bad experiences like that, but because we've all had terrible working experiences at jobs that we didn't like, and my biggest thing is I always want them to have a job that they enjoy. Granted, none of them are full-time, just to be clear there, but there's going to be a point where hopefully they do get to be full-time with Little Webby, and I want them to have the best experience, and I want them to grow, and I want them to be fulfilled from the work that they do. So that's been difficult to manage as well in a part-time situation where, they can only commit part of their time to this, and the client can also only commit part of their time to it, and it's like this weird, none of us can fully, like, we give everything we got in the time that we got, but, time is valuable. And my heart's pretty big for clients as well. For those that have a vision and those that want something beautiful created, like somebody that really wants a website and they know exactly what they're going to use it for, and I get fulfillment from making something like that happen, or even a logo design or whatever it may be. I find fulfillment creating those things for clients as well, just because it's pushing them further along their journey, and hopefully that builds a relationship. The only thing that I haven't figured out yet is how to turn clients into friends. And I'm sure I'll get there. Or maybe it's never meant to be that way, but I would like it to get to that point. In October, I went to Vid Summit, And it was very eye-opening to me because I was sitting with people that had millions of subscribers and followers who were also experiencing imposter syndrome, who were also feeling like they weren't there, like they haven't made it yet. And then it's wild that everybody experiences that. And I don't know where it stems from, whether it's insecurity or just whatever it may be, but it was really it was just interesting to see like somebody that has achieved the goal that I would like to achieve just feel like, oh man, I'm not even there. Oh man, I'm not doing it right. I'm not doing this or that. And it's like, wow, everybody's experiencing the same stuff. For some reason that makes it better. Makes me feel a little, I don't know. It actually makes me feel like I hope I have have enough gratitude to when I'm at that point I can be confident with where I am. Definitely not never settle, but I hope I'm not experiencing imposter syndrome once I'm at that point. The other thing I learned from there is that things are possible. Those dreams that we all have, somebody's achieved them for the most part, and it's hard, but if you're consistent, it's possible. Right around that time, you'll start seeing, if you go back, you'll see me start posting videos on my own, becoming becoming the face of my own channel, and the vlogs are deceased, RIP. I guess you could say the vlog died in 2019. We'll see if we can resuscitate it sometime in the future. But I was encouraged by it. I was inspired by Vid Summit to get back out there and start creating more, because it made me realize, like, if these goofy guys can also do it, I'm a goofy guy. Why can't I do it? Which is nice. In November, I flew to Texas to see one of my good friends. Oh, it's also Kyle. I talked about him earlier. And my friend Jake went along too. And that opened my eyes to, one, how great it is to have both of them as friends. But two, how weird adult friendships are and difficult. Jake doesn't live too far from me. And yet we had to fly to Texas to see each other. Like, planning with adult friendships has just changed the game. It's so much more intentional, and it takes much more effort than it used to, especially when you used to live next to them. And then also in November, merch came out. The sweatshirts came out, and I am just so grateful and so humbled, and I feel so supported by those that have gotten a sweatshirt. It really has meant a lot to me, and I feel like I didn't think anybody was watching or listening. I mean, despite the analytics, like, of course, I don't ever try to see these as numbers, but like, there's not a whole lot of two-way conversation going on. You know what I mean? And it was just like a clear communication back to me, like, we support you, and that meant a lot to me. So thank you if you purchased a sweatshirt. In December, I landed my first, what feels like, real gig. I've gotten those weird game shows, but this was like the first real comedy trailer thing that I was in, put on by Hanger Bee Studios, which I am still so excited that I got to work with them. And that was a great experience. It fuels me to want to do it even more. So if you haven't seen that comedy trailer, it's up on my Facebook. Please go see it. And it's I get to put the acting skills into play. That was really fun. We're going to end this podcast on some of the podcast stats, which I think is going to be a nice little note. We reached 110 listeners, which is amazing. Thank you. Appreciate you. And on YouTube, we got 223 subscribers, which I also am super stoked about. It was weird. I heard somebody else say their numbers on their podcast, and I was like, I don't know why they'd say that. But I feel like, I don't know. I feel like I want to do it too, because my whole goal is to, like, every time I see you guys succeed, like, I want to support you, and I think vice versa. If the channel is growing and the podcast is growing, I hope you're happy for me as well. So much love to all of you. I hope 2020 is going to be your year that you kill it, and don't let anything stand in the way from the things that you want to do. I mapped out my Google Calendar for the rest of 2020, so I'm trying to spend every minute doing something that's going to get me closer to my goals, whether that be relationally, spiritually, physically, emotionally. I'm giving it my darnest this year, and I hope you do too. Thank you if you are a consistent listener. Thank you if you've given a 5-star review. If you've supported me in any way, I just appreciate you. So cheers to 2020, baby, and I hope you have a great one.